The house I shouldn't have entered. I remember the first time I saw the house. It stood at the very end of the old gravel road, surrounded by crooked trees that seemed to lean toward it, as if whispering secrets. The windows were dark, smeared with years of dust and neglect, and the wooden boards on the porch sagged with age. Most people in town avoided that place, some wouldn't even walk past it at night, but me, I couldn't resist. I've always had this strange curiosity, this need to explore the things people warn me about. When my friends dared me to spend just one night inside that house, I laughed and accepted. I thought it would be nothing more than cobwebs, broken furniture, and maybe a few rats. I had no idea what was waiting for me. That evening, I packed a flashlight, a bottle of water, and my phone. Nothing else. I didn't want to look like I was over-preparing for some silly dare. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, I walked toward the house. With every step closer, the air seemed heavier, colder, almost as if the place itself was breathing. The front door was slightly open, creaking with the soft push of the wind. I paused, waiting, half expecting someone or something to step out. But nothing came, and my heart pounded in my chest. But I reminded myself, it's just an old house. It's nothing more. When I pushed the door wider, the smell hit me first. It was a mix of damp wood, mold, and something metallic. It's almost like rust. The floor groaned under my weight as I stepped inside. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper, broken picture frames, and dust swirling in the air like ash. Still, it wasn't what I saw that unsettled me, it was what I felt. The house wasn't empty. There was this pressure in the air, like unseen eyes following me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just nerves. Wandered through the hallway, the silence broken only by the sound of my footsteps. In the living room, I found a torn sofa, its stuffing spilling out like intestines. A shattered chandelier dangled precariously above, swaying even though the air was still. My flashlight flickered once, then steadied. I tapped it nervously and kept moving. Then I noticed the pictures. Old family portraits hung crooked on the walls. The faces were faded, but their eyes seemed sharper, clearer, as if they were watching me. I leaned closer to one, and I swear the pupils dilated as my light passed over them. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the flashlight. Shaking, I told myself, no, it's just my imagination. But the deeper I went, the worse it got. I heard faint whispers so soft at first I thought it was the wind, but there was no wind. The air was still, suffocating. My skin prickled, and I felt cold fingers brush against the back of my neck. I spun around, my beam slicing through the dark, but the hallway behind me was empty. I tried calling out just to break the silence. Hello? Is anyone here? My voice echoed, bouncing off the walls, and then another voice echoed back. But it wasn't mine. It was lower, slower, almost mocking. Hello. The sound came from upstairs. My blood ran cold. My friends had sworn no one lived here, that the place was abandoned for decades. My legs felt heavy, but something pulled me forward, daring me to climb the staircase. Ow. The steps groaned under my weight as I ascended. Each creak echoed like a warning, but I ignored it. At the top of the stairs, a long hallway stretched before me. The wallpaper was torn away, revealing rotting wood beneath. At the far end, one door stood slightly ajar, and a faint light glowed from inside. I should have left. Every part of me screamed to turn back, to run, but I couldn't. Curiosity, or maybe something darker, pushed me forward. When I reached the door, I pushed it open. The light inside wasn't from a lamp or a bulb. It was a flickering candle. Sitting in the center of the room on the wooden floor, around it, symbols were carved into the planks, deep and jagged. The air was colder here, biting against my skin. And then I saw it written across the far wall in what looked like dried blood. Welcome home. The candle flame flickered violently, and the door slammed shut behind me. My flashlight went out, and in the darkness, something whispered right into my ear. Whispers in the dark, the door slammed behind me with a force that shook the entire room. I spun around, fumbling with my flashlight, but it refused to turn back on. The only light came from the flickering candle in the center of the floor. The shadows stretched long and twisted across the walls, moving in ways that didn't match the flame. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Hello? My voice cracked, weaker than I intended. No answer. And then soft, almost delicate a whisper brushed against my ear. "You shouldn't be here." I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. My breath caught in my chest as I whipped around, shining the useless flashlight at nothing. The room was empty except for the candle and those strange carved symbols in the floor. The whisper came again, this time from the other side. "Leave, before it's too late." The sound was so close I felt the air shift beside me. Ah! I stumbled backward until my foot caught on one of the carved grooves. My heel slipped, and I nearly fell straight into the circle of symbols. At the last second, I steadied myself. Something deep inside me screamed not to step inside that circle. The candlelight suddenly surged as though someone had taken a deep breath and blown on it, not to extinguish it, but to feed it. The shadows along the wall writhed, growing longer, stretching until they reached the ceiling. I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows weren't mine. I forced myself to move, grabbing the doorknob behind me. I twisted hard. Nothing. The door wouldn't budge. I pulled harder, slamming my shoulder into it, but it was as if the wood had fused into the frame. That's when I heard it again. Not just one whisper this time, but many. Dozens. Hundreds. They layered over each other. Some hissing, some murmuring, some sobbing. "Stay. Join us. You don't belong to yourself anymore." My heart thundered in my chest. My flashlight, useless until now, suddenly flickered back to life for a split second. In that brief flash, I saw them. Faces, they were in the walls. Pressed against the cracked wallpaper, stretching and contorting as if the plaster was nothing but thin skin. Hollow eyes, gaping mouths, all opening and closing as if screaming silently. When the flashlight died again, the faces disappeared, but their whispers remained. I squeezed my eyes shut, forcing myself to breathe. This isn't real. This isn't real. But when I opened them again, the candle had moved. It wasn't in the center of the circle anymore. It was closer. Only a few inches away from my feet. Something wanted me in that circle. The whispers grew louder, faster, almost frantic. My name slipped through the noise, my own name, repeated again and again in different voices. Some sounded like people I knew, others sounded like me. I bolted toward the window. It was cracked with age, and I slammed the butt of my flashlight against it, desperate to break it open. The glass rattled but didn't shatter. Instead, a thin, dark line of liquid trickled down the pane, as though the window itself was bleeding. I backed away, shaking, the whispers now so loud they vibrated in my skull. My vision blurred, the room spinning. I felt myself swaying, drawn toward the circle. Then, all at once, the voices stopped. The silence was worse. I dared a glance at the candle. It had gone out. The room was plunged into pitch black. For a long moment, I didn't breathe. My ears strained, desperate for the smallest sound. Nothing. And then one voice, clear as day, right behind me. "Don't turn around." But of course I did. The last thing I saw before everything went black was a figure. Tall and thin, its face nothing but a hollow void where its features should have been. It reached for me, and the coldest fingers I had ever felt wrapped around my wrist. I screamed. The room that wasn't on the map when I came to, I was lying on the wooden floor, my flashlight clutched in my hand. The candle was gone. The symbols were gone. The whispers were gone. For a brief moment, I wondered if I had blacked out and dreamed it all. But my wrist was still cold where that thing had touched me. I sat up slowly, my head pounding. The door behind me was wide open now, as if mocking me. I staggered into the hallway, desperate for air, desperate for light, desperate to get out of that house. The hallway stretched ahead, longer than I remembered. The wallpaper peeled away in strips, revealing dark stains beneath. My legs felt heavy, as though the house itself was trying to keep me inside. Still, I pushed forward, following the faint outline of the staircase. But when I reached the stairs, something was wrong. There was another hallway, branched off to the left, where I could swear there hadn't been one before. The wood looked newer than the rest of the house, less decayed, but the air seeping from it was colder, sharper, biting at my skin. I froze. The logical part of my brain screamed that this made no sense. I had studied the floor plan once, years ago, in some dusty archive where the house was marked as historical property, There had been no extra hallway, no hidden wing. And yet here it was. The deeper part of me, the part that should have run, was curious. Against my better judgment, I turned and stepped inside. The hallway was narrow, the ceiling low. My flashlight beam trembled as I walked, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the light was in cutting the darkness. It was swallowed by it. The walls here were different too. Not wood, not plaster. They looked wet, glossy, almost pulsing with some slow rhythmic beat. At the end of the hallway was a door, plain, wooden, with a brass handle. I reached out and touched it, and a shiver jolted up my arm. The wood felt alive, vibrating faintly beneath my hand. I hesitated, then pushed it open. What I saw inside nearly made me drop the flashlight. It was a bedroom by the look of it, but it was untouched by time. The wallpaper was pristine, the bed neatly made, the curtains clean and white. Everything here was preserved, frozen, as if waiting for someone to come back, and on the dresser was a photograph. My stomach turned to stone when I lifted it. It was a family portrait. A man, a woman, and a child standing between them. Their faces were pale, their smiles wide. But what made my blood run cold was the fourth figure in the picture, standing slightly behind them, almost blurred. It was me. Same face, same clothes I was wearing right now. The photo slipped from my hand and cracked against the floor. I staggered back, my breath shallow, my pulse racing. I couldn't make sense of it. How could I be in a photo that had to be decades old? The bed creaked suddenly. My flashlight darted toward it. The sheets were moving, sinking as though someone had just sat down. I stumbled toward the door, but it slammed shut before I could reach it. My light flickered wildly, and the air grew thick with whispers again. This time, they weren't warning me. They were laughing, a low, cruel laughter that filled the room, bouncing off the walls until it felt like it was inside my skull. The sheets on the bed shifted again, pulling back slowly. Inch by inch, they revealed the outline of a body beneath them. A body that hadn't been there when I walked in. My heart hammered. The laughter grew louder. I stepped back, pressing myself against the cold wall, when suddenly the body sat upright. The sheets fell away and I saw its face. It was mine, paler, thinner, its eyes sunken and hollow. But the smile stretched too wide, tearing the skin at the corners of its mouth. It raised a hand and beckoned me closer. And in my own voice, it whispered, "Welcome back." When the mirror smiled back, I ran. I don't remember pushing the door open, or how I forced my legs to move. But suddenly I was out of that impossible room and back in the hallway, gasping for breath. My chest ached, and my throat burned, as if I had been screaming, though I didn't remember making a sound. The door slammed shut behind me, sealing the room away as if it had never existed. When I turned my flashlight back on it, there was nothing. Just a blank stretch of wall. No handle, no seams. No sign it had ever been there. But I knew what I saw. And worse, I knew what I saw looked like me. My legs shook as I made my way down the hallway, desperate to find the stairs again, desperate to escape this nightmare. The silence pressed in around me, thicker than before, broken only by the thundering of my own heartbeat. Every few steps, I thought I heard another set of footsteps behind me, just slightly out of sync with mine. I told myself not to look back, but I did. And there, at the far end of the hallway, was a mirror. At least I thought it was a mirror. It stood tall, framed in gold that had long since dulled with age. The glass was cracked, jagged lines running across its surface like veins. But it wasn't the cracks that froze me in place, it was the reflection, because it wasn't copying me. I lifted my flashlight, but in the mirror, the version of me didn't move. It just stood there, head tilted, smiling. The kind of smile that didn't belong on a human face. I took a step back, and so did my reflection, but a heartbeat too late, like it was deciding whether or not to follow me. My mouth went dry. No, this isn't real. The reflection's lips moved, shaping the words in perfect sync, but no sound came from it. Instead, the whispers returned, surrounding me like a swarm of insects. They filled the air, rushing into my ears until I could hardly think. My reflection raised its hand, pressing it against the inside of the glass. Slowly it leaned forward until its forehead touched the surface. The crack spread wider, splintering like a spiderweb. I stepped closer without meaning to, drawn in by my own face. My fingers trembled as I reached out. My hand hovered inches from the glass. No. That's when it smiled wider, too wide, tearing at the corners of its cheeks. Oh. The whispers stopped, and in a voice that was mine but deeper, rasping, it spoke from the other side of the glass. "Let me out." The mirror shuddered. The frame rattled. One of the cracks split open like a wound, and a thin black liquid began to seep through, dripping onto the floorboards. The smell was rancid, metallic, like blood left to rot. I stumbled backward, shaking my head.
No.
The reflection slammed its fists against the barrier, the sound like bones cracking. With each hit, the cracks spread farther, splinters of glass falling onto the floor. "Let me out," it demanded again, louder, angrier. I turned to run, but the hallway seemed to stretch longer, pulling away from me no matter how fast I moved. My flashlight flickered, casting jerky shadows across the walls, and in every shadow, I saw my reflection smiling back. Finally, I reached a door and shoved it open, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against it, panting, listening. For a few seconds, silence. Then, faintly, the sound of glass shattering. I didn't dare open the door again. I turned my flashlight toward the room I had entered. It was small, lined with broken furniture and cobwebs. In the corner stood another mirror, this one smaller, hanging crooked on the wall. My blood ran cold, because in that mirror I wasn't standing alone. The things crawling in the walls, the mirror in the corner, tilted slightly, as though someone had just touched it. My breath caught in my throat as I raised the flashlight toward it. There I was, pale, wide-eyed, shaking. But I wasn't alone. A shadow stood behind me in the reflection. It was tall, impossibly thin, its head brushing the ceiling. Its arms hung low, too long for its body, ending in claws that curved toward the floor. I spun around, nothing, just the broken furniture and peeling wallpaper. But when I looked back at the mirror, the shadow hadn't moved. It was still there, closer. I dropped the mirror from the wall, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. The glass scattered across the floor, and for the briefest moment, each shard reflected not me, but dozens of those shadows, all reaching, all waiting. Stumbled back, pressing myself against the opposite wall, my chest heaving. That's when I heard it scratching. At first it was faint, like rats behind the plaster. But then it grew louder, faster. The sound of claws dragging across wood, racing along the walls all around me. The floor beneath my feet vibrated. Dust rained from the ceiling as something moved inside the walls. Not one thing. Many. I pressed my ear to the wall without thinking, desperate to understand. What I heard wasn't scratching anymore. It was breathing, shallow, wet. Dozens of breaths, all in sync, as if the walls themselves were alive and gasping for air. I stumbled back, shining the flashlight along the cracked plaster. That's when a bulge appeared. The wall pushed outward, stretching, splitting. Fingers blackened, twisted, poked through the cracks, writhing like worms. One of the hands burst through completely, clawing at the air, its nails scraping the floorboards. I screamed, slamming my foot against it. The hand withdrew with a hiss, but the scratching multiplied. All along the walls, bulges pressed outward, arms, shoulders, faces pressing through, as though the house was trying to give birth to them. I ran for the door. My hands fumbled with the knob, but it wouldn't turn. Behind me, the first figure began to pull itself free. The plaster cracked open, and something slid out. Its body was pale, skin stretched tight over bone, its jaw unhinged wider than it should, drool spilling from its gaping mouth. It screeched, a sound like nails on metal, and launched toward me. I threw myself aside, hitting the floor hard. My flashlight skittered across the boards, spinning wildly. In its beam, I saw more of them crawling out of the walls, clawing, dragging their bodies forward, their eyes hollow pits glowing faintly with sickly light. I grabbed the flashlight and swung it at the nearest one. The glass cracked against its skull, but it barely reacted. Its head twisted unnaturally, snapping around to face me. I scrambled to my feet, kicking over broken furniture to block them. My only thought was escape. My only thought was out. I hurled myself at the boarded-up window, slamming the flashlight against it with all my strength. The wood splintered but didn't break. Behind me, the creatures crawled closer, their limbs clicking against the floor like insects. One of them grabbed my ankle. Its grip was icy, its claws biting into my skin. I screamed and kicked, the sound echoing through the house. Somehow I wrenched free, stumbling toward the door again. This time it opened. I didn't question it. I bolted into the hallway, slamming it shut behind me. The scratching didn't stop. Could still hear them in the walls, following, tracking me wherever I went. The hallway seemed to shift again, longer, darker. I didn't care. I just ran, the sound of my own breath mixing with theirs. And then silence. Too sudden. I stopped, trembling, turning slowly. The hallway behind me was empty. The walls were smooth. The scratching had ceased. For a moment, I thought maybe I had escaped them. Maybe they were trapped in that room, but then I looked down. The floorboards beneath me were swelling, cracking, and something was crawling up through the floor. My doppelgänger awakes. The floorboards buckled beneath my feet, splitting open with a sickening crack. I staggered backward as pale, skeletal fingers forced their way through the gaps, clawing for air. The boards groaned, snapping under the pressure, until an arm-thin, veined gray slithered out and gripped the edge. Something was climbing up from beneath the house. I ran, the boards splintering behind me, as more hands burst through, grabbing and clawing. My flashlight beam swung wildly across the walls as I sprinted down the hallway, searching for any door, any way out. Then at the very end of the corridor I saw it, another mirror. This one was tall and freestanding, its frame black and warped as if it had been scorched by fire. My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to turn back, but the sound of wood shattering behind me told me I didn't have a choice. I stumbled into the room and slammed the door shut. My flashlight shook in my hand as I turned to face the mirror. At first, I saw only myself, sweat-soaked, trembling, eyes wide with terror. But then, my reflection moved. Not like before, when it lagged or mimicked. This time it moved first. I lifted my hand slowly, hesitantly. My reflection didn't. It tilted its head, studying me with a smile that stretched too far, exposing jagged teeth where mine should have been. "Stop," I whispered, though my own lips never moved in the glass. The reflection raised its hand, placing its palm flat against the inside of the mirror. Black cracks spread outward from its touch, splintering across the surface. Then it pressed harder and the glass bulged. No. I backed away, my shoulder hitting the wall. No, this isn't happening. The reflection's smile widened. Its eyes rolled back into black pits, and it leaned forward, pressing its entire body against the glass. With a wet, tearing sound, it began to push through. Its hand emerged first, pale and dripping with something dark. The fingers bent wrong, too many joints, as they gripped the edge of the frame. Then came the head, my head but hollow, twisted, mouth splitting open, ear to ear. I froze, paralyzed, as my own face crawled out of the mirror and dropped heavily onto the floor. It stood taller than me now, skin stretched tight over its bones, yet every feature was undeniably mine. It tilted its head, mirroring the way I had done before. And then, in my exact voice, it whispered, "You're not real." The words hit me like ice. My knees buckled. I shook my head violently. "No, you're not me. You're not." It lunged faster than I could react, slamming me against the wall. Its grip was like iron, cold and unyielding. Our faces were inches apart, and for the first time I realized what was happening. It wasn't trying to kill me, it was trying to replace me. Its mouth opened wider, unhinging like a snake's. A deep, guttural sound poured out, vibrating the air. My chest tightened, my breath caught, couldn't move, couldn't think. I felt something pulling at me, draining me, as though it was peeling me away from myself. My flashlight flickered, casting sharp shadows around the room. In the strobing light, I saw our shadows. Mine was shrinking, its was growing. "No," I screamed, using every ounce of strength I had left. I slammed the flashlight into its head. The glass shattered, sparks flying. The thing staggered back with an inhuman shriek, black liquid spraying across the floor. I collapsed, gasping, my vision blurring. My hand shook as I grabbed the largest shard of broken glass from the flashlight. When I looked up, it was already standing again, smiling, waiting, and for the first time I understood the truth. This thing wasn't some ghost or monster, it was me. Or at least, it was what I would become if I stayed in this house. And as it stretched its arms wide, welcoming me, I knew it wasn't finished. Not until one of us was gone. Trapped between life and death, my doppelganger advanced slowly, savoring every second, its smile stretching wider, as though it already knew the outcome. I tightened my grip on the shard of broken glass, my hands slick with sweat and blood where the edges had cut me. "Stay away," I whispered, though my voice trembled. It tilted its head, mimicking the exact way I stood, even the fear in my eyes, but twisted into mockery. Then it spoke in my voice, perfect and clear. "Stay away." The words echoed around the room, overlapping, growing louder, until the sound was coming from every direction. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The voices were inside me now, pulling at my mind, unraveling my thoughts. I staggered back against the wall, my knees buckled. The floor beneath me vibrated. And I realized the scratching in the walls hadn't stopped. It had only grown quieter, waiting. The house itself was holding its breath, watching. The doppelganger lunged. I swung the shard wildly, the glass biting deep into its shoulder. A gush of thick black liquid sprayed out, splattering my face. It shrieked, a sound that made my skull throb, but it didn't falter. Its grip closed around my wrist, twisting until the shard clattered to the floor. I was pinned, powerless. Its face hovered inches from mine, skin rippling like it was barely holding together. Its eyes' black pits reflected me, not it. I stared into them and saw myself screaming, struggling, failing. And then, I wasn't in the room anymore. I was standing in the street outside, the house looming in front of me. The sun was out, birds chirped. Everything looked normal, safe, peaceful. For a fleeting moment, I thought it was over, till I noticed the reflection in the window. It wasn't me, it was him. The doppelganger was inside, staring out, smiling, as if it had one. And when I raised my hand to wave or maybe to test if I was really free, my reflection in the glass didn't move. Panic surged through me. I spun around, looking for anyone, anything that could prove I was still alive. But the street was empty, silent. Then, slowly, the world around me began to fade. The colors drained, the sounds muffled, until everything was washed in gray. I was back in the house. Lying on the floor, the thing crouched over me, its hands pressed against my chest. I felt it digging inside, pulling at something deeper than flesh. My vision flickered, my body numb. It was taking my soul. Fought thrashing weakly, clawing at its arms, but my strength was gone. My breath came in shallow gasps, my heartbeat slowing. Darkness crept in at the edges of my vision. Then movement. The broken shard of glass on the floor caught my eye, glinting faintly in the beam of my dying flashlight. With the last ounce of will I had left, I reached out, my fingers brushing it. The doppelgänger leaned closer, its mouth opening impossibly wide, preparing to consume me completely. I gripped the shard and drove it upward, straight into its throat. A burst of black liquid erupted, spraying across the walls, sizzling as it touched the floor. The creature reeled back, its hands releasing me. I gasped, dragging air into my burning lungs. But as it staggered, choking on the glass buried in its neck, it didn't fall, it only laughed. My own laugh. The sound made my stomach twist. My blood ran cold. Because in that moment I realized the truth. Killing it wasn't possible. I wasn't fighting something separate. I was fighting myself. And with each breath I took inside this cursed house, I was becoming more like it, trapped somewhere between life and death, between me and the thing that wanted to replace me. The silence that consumed me, the creature myself, staggered back, black liquid dripping down its chest where the shard still jutted out. But it didn't fall. It didn't weaken. It only stood taller, straighter. Like stabbing, it had only made it stronger. Its eyes glowed faintly now, like coals smoldering in a dying fire. And in the silence between us, I heard it breathing in perfect sync with me. Every inhale, every exhale, every tremor of fear. It was no longer a shadow trying to break free. It was me. I backed toward the door, gasping for air. My flashlight sputtered, then died completely, leaving us in pitch-black darkness. The only sound was our shared breathing, the rhythm so exact it was impossible to tell which belonged to me. Then came the whispers again, softer than before, almost gentle. Not taunting this time, not mocking. Let go. You don't need to fight. You were always ours. My knees buckled. My strength was gone. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run, but all I could do was stare into the dark, waiting for the thing to strike. And then, nothing. The whispers stopped. The house fell completely silent. The silence was so heavy it pressed against my chest, suffocating me worse than any scream. I turned in circles, desperate for a sound, any sound, but the air swallowed even the rasp of my breath. I wasn't alone, but I couldn't hear it anymore. The silence was the worst part. I stumbled blindly toward where I thought the door had been, my hands groping against the wall. My fingers brushed cold wood, and relief surged through me. I pulled the door open and staggered into the hallway. The house was different. The wallpaper was gone. The doors were gone. There were no windows, no stairs, just endless walls stretching into the dark. The house had become a maze, shifting and bending itself to keep me inside. And in that silence, I realized something. The thing hadn't followed me. It was me now. The black liquid still burned my skin. The whispers still curled inside my head. And every step I took felt heavier, slower, as if I was sinking deeper into something I couldn't escape. I came to another mirror, cracked, jagged, leaning against the wall. Didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. And when I did, I saw nothing, no reflection, no face, just emptiness where I should have been. The silence deepened, pressing against me until I thought my skull would split. My throat tightened, my lungs screamed for air, but still no sound escaped me. Even my screams had been taken. The house had won. I wasn't alive anymore. I wasn't dead either. I was something in between, trapped in the silence, erased, replaced by the thing that crawled out of the mirror. And now, as you hear this story, I wonder, am I the one telling it? Or is it the thing that smiled back,